Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
And so the ending part of the first half of the season brings itself into view. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome home. Welcome to Toaster here in Northamptonshire in England. Welcome to potentially one of the greatest circuits the world has ever devised. And welcome to Silverstone, a track that has seen everything, done everything, and is the most predictable track that the world has ever seen. My name is Jake Sperry here with the iRacing Grand Prix Tour, and of course here on SimSpeed TV with Taylor Mills, Dan Yeaman in the production truck for us today. But here in the middle of England, Taylor, this is a circuit that says, above all else, this is why we race.
Yeah, Silverstone, of course, being the home of Formula One, hosted the first Grand Prix back in 1950, I want to say. I couldn't tell you who won it, not that much of a Formula One historian, but has certainly had some classics in its time. Think back to the likes of 2008, back when Lewis Hamilton had that dominant masterclass in the wet, and even as recently as 2024 when he did the same in very changeable conditions. In front of our field of drivers tonight is 18 corners of pure driving perfection. And you don't even call them by numbers around here. That's how famous the corners are. Abbey, Village, Farm, Aintree, Brooklyn, Suffield, Woodcote, Copse, Magus, Becketson, Chapel, Stowe, Vale, and Club Corner. Each of those turns producing a unique challenge that our field of cars are going to have to tackle tonight. The beauty of this circuit is it provides plenty of opportunities for overtaking and side-by-side racing. And personally, I am stoked to see how many cars we're going to see go around the outside of turn 15 today. 2 DRS zones will assist in that overtaking down the Wellington Straight and down the Hangar Straight, giving the chance to sort of drop back a little bit through the high-speed corners and then try and claw it all back on 2 of the fastest straights on the circuit.
Look how early that first DRS detection point is, and that second as well. You've got a long wait before you use them, and that will give a lot of insight into how you've got to be strategic through those very, very important corners on track. The loop section of the circuit, and of course, the most famous chicanes in all of motorsport, Maggots, Beckett, and Chapel to go and understand. But speaking of understanding, let's talk about the championship, because we've had a lot of drama go through over the last couple of races in this championship. Eduardo Rodis, though, still comfortably on top when it comes to the overall championship in iRacing. Over 1,300 drivers now have taken at least one race and points in this championship, with Florian Kammeier second, and then Jacob Reed moving up to third after his victory last time out. Walter Lux dropping down to fourth, with George van Rensburg, James Byrne, Kent Nielsen, Paul O'Regan, Leopold Steneros doing the early racing, and Reynaldo Augusto rounding out the top 10 in category, getting a huge bump up to 7th. But when it comes to that SimSpeed Championship, Rodis still has his race-leading margin, but it has wildly diminished after the black flag penalty points came in. 30 championship points only on home soil for Jacob Reed.
You took the words right out of my mouth on that one, Sperry, for Eduardo Rodis. It was a race to remember at the Red Bull Ring last time out, as Jacob Reed able to claw back some of that margin and bring the championship lead to within two race wins. It's starting to look a little bit more doable for last year's champion. And as we keep talking about, the streak that Jacob Reed went on in this middle part of the championship was absolutely spectacular. He needs to be doing the same again this year if he wants to come back and snatch that crown, because Eduardo Rodis, it's sort of balancing on his head right now. James Byrne with a good result last time out moves him up a spot just in front of Emil Bernstorff, who didn't show up, and it was another couple of strong results for Florian Kammerer and Volta Lux, who were both holding station in third and fourth. But look at Edward Apariari, first top 5 in iRacing Grand Prix Tour history, jumped him up 7 spots and is closing in now on George van Rensburg. Jason Anderson Jr. falling a couple of points behind. So, halfway point coming upon us. It is still all to play for in the Sim Speed Championship.
And that 7 and that 6 will always be the wrong way around this season, I've just decided. But right now here at Silverstone, 52 laps of racing action today, 306.33 kilometers worth out there. They must use 2 tyre compounds, and of course DRS will be activated from the start of lap 3. We have run this every single iRacing Grand Prix Tour so far. Your winners from the last 3 years: Oliver Stepanov in 2022, Jordan Gronkowski in 2023, and Jacob Reed last year on that stretch of 9 consecutive victories in a row. But strategy is going to be important, because they are completely in line with 2025 C2, C3 and C4. And looking at the tyre life, it's a mix that we saw earlier on between a 1 and a 2 stop strategy, Taylor.
Yeah, we'll have a look at that strategy and see what the potential options are for the field tonight. But Silverstone is a track that absolutely eats tyres for breakfast. Forget turns 1 and 2. They're relatively easy to navigate. But think about the absolutely brutal attack from Copse through Maggots, Beckett, and Chapel, where the tyres are just constantly loaded up with absolutely no reprieve. Relatively simple strategy for tonight, though, as it's 18 or 19 laps on the medium, and then close out with 2 equal or so length stints on the soft. It's going to be great to see a couple of 2-stop strategies out there today, but the big question is, as always, will anyone be brave enough to tackle the 1-stop strategy?
Renato Augusto moves up third fastest there over the line, getting a 1:28.7 on the board. One driver without a time at the moment is your championship leader, Eduardo Rodis, who runs himself past the national pit and over towards Copse Corner, going at about 170 miles an hour through that section, and really working every single corner now through the left and right. Now going in through Chapel Corner on the exit here. That's Chapel, the small left, and then you're starting to work this hanger straight all the way over to the left-hand side. Sebastian Rekov goes up to 11th position with that qualifying time, but this is all about getting to the top. 28.5 is the margin set by Jacob Reed with 2 minutes left to go. But now for Eduardo Rodis, how's his nerve on the power over the line? 28.583! Stole it! 3,000ths of a second!
Fastest final sector of all for Eduardo Rodis, and he had one opportunity to get that done after invalidating his first lap, and he absolutely snatches that one from Jacob Reed. Here's Dennis Branch coming through the final sector to finish his lap into the Vale chicane, once again squeezing on that throttle pedal through Club Corner, use all the track, get back to that curb on the inside. It's not going to be a 28.5, but it's a 28.7 still, which is a very competitive lap time to put car 5 in position 5.
Yeah, the only other driver out there is Edward Apariari, who can try and find a time, but look at that there, 1:55 opening sector. I don't think that's quite competitive enough to go and put a time on the board, but his second lap will be through and done on the book, so that will declare this qualifying as over and done with. 22 drivers here today, 2 not setting a qualifying time, which I do find rather interesting as a scenario. But out there, We talk about fine margins when it comes to races and championships, but 0.003 of a second says all you need to know. Apari crosses the line. Nobody else is out there on a qualifying lap, with maybe the exception of Sergio Borja, who unfortunately is not going to get around to get another lap time sorted. So that is the field stack, and it will look then as follows as we will move over from qualifying in towards the race. And what a qualifying by Eduardo Radiz. One lap, one opportunity. Stamp your name down with authority. 128.583. That is good enough for the pole position. It will be Jacob Reed alongside for company on that front row. Volta Lux, the mechanical engineer over at AVL Race Tech, is going to be in third position, with Reynaldo Augusto going from fourth. Dennis Branch, 2 starts in the Grand Prix Tour, 2 non-finishes in the Grand Prix Tour. We'll be looking to try and break the duck right now in 5th position, with Florian Kammerer a little bit further back in P6 with a bit of work to do. It then follows on to the next page with Kent Nielsen, the most experienced driver in this field, and then the driver with the most retirements alongside him, George van Rensburg, in 8th place, with Edward Apari 9th, and a first start in the Grand Prix Tour for Amin Ali Shahi, who will go from 10th position. It then follows Victor Awad and Mark van Dalen on the 6th row of the grid, as Sebastian Rekov will go from 13th along with Nick Burke in 14th place. Lyle Pina will have Sean Fitzgerald for company in 16th, as Mr. Top 10 Paul O'Regan will go from 17th along with Jason Green in 18th. The top 20 is rounded out by Gerard Burrell and Robert Ridgway, then in that 20th place, with Sergio Borja and Isaac Ruska split by their iRating, unable to get a qualifying time in that was necessarily wanted. But as they sit, no Adam Webb here today racing. He's spotting for Kent Nielsen, worth keeping in mind. Florian Kammerer's got Christoph Klinkmann in the ears right now as we take a look over at the entrance to the circuit under the run through to bridge, which they don't run anymore. Just a handful of drivers at the back. We wait to get up onto the starting grid, and it is worth noting this is one of the fastest starts to a race. That committed right that they go through at Abbey Corner is going to make all of the difference. So who stands up? Who gets himself counted? A mixture of medium and hard runners out there. Kent Nielsen, the first of the hard compound tyres. We've got 5 hard runners out there to start this race. Everybody else says the medium is the way forward. Lights now go on here at Silverstone at the halfway race of the season. Lights will go out here at Silverstone, and we're underway. Jacob Reed gets a really nice start there on the inside, but it's dirtier on that inside line. They run single file through the front 5 through Abbey Corner and get it all nicely done. Ali Shahi has to abandon ship with Mark van Dalen in towards the loop section once again for the first time that they go, and they all manage to get through quite nicely. A little look down the inside by Dennis Branch is there, and no rear wing on the back of Ali Shahi, who goes around.
Just trying to figure out exactly what happened into there to Alice Shahi going wide through turn 1, and I think it's just a tap from one of the cars behind of Mark van Dalen. Yeah, but there's that swap for the race lead. Then there's Jacob Reed making up a position on Eduardo Radiz nice and early in this race. Wants that clean air, wants to get away, and that is definitely the way to go here at Silverstone, as Radiz coming under more pressure from Volta Lux behind.
Yep, and they've got no DRS on the opening 2 laps of this race in the Mercedes W13 performance. So every time they're going around, they're thinking, how can I get the best run possible? Am I playing this game perfectly with the battery? Out of Beckett's then and through Chapel Corner. They go onto the hanger straight for the first time. Reed, Radiz looks in 3rd. Branch 4th. Kammerer is up to 5th. Augusto, losing 2 off the start, is down to 6th position. And they hit the brakes and work through. Van Dalen up 4 off the start. Robert Ridgway up 6 off of the start, having a great start to this one here at Silverstone. But for the moment, Jacob Reed happy with where he wants to be at the front of the field, but he knows that there are some very quick drivers behind who want to spoil the party.
Yeah, there certainly are, and I don't want to speak too early in this one, but Volta Lux already after the first lap still within DRS range of Eduardo Radiz and Jacob Reed. He's a driver that we've slowly watched make a couple of steps forward not only over the course of the last couple of seasons, but particularly
Oh, we got
this
trouble.
one.
We got huge trouble. Sergio
Take us
Borgia,
through it.
Sebastian Rekov just about avoids all of this there. Sean Fitzgerald's caught up in it. A huge accident at turn 3, one of the biggest braking zones on the circuit. Fitzgerald got caught out with Rekov just about taking a tap to the rear, and ultimately it's Robert Ridgway who gets T-boned at the side.
Yeah, just trying to unpack that one a little bit. Sebastian Rekov looks like he gets on the brakes just a little bit deeper than Sean Fitzgerald, who was just in front, and takes avoiding action to the inside of the circuit. But then Sergio Boyer coming in with so much more speed, braking so much later, tries to dive to the inside to stay out of that one, clips the rear wing of Boyer, and then just T-bones Fitzgerald. And I think the other driver involved there was Lyle Pienaar. No, sorry, Pienaar stayed out of that one. Fitzgerald and Robert Ridgway. Hopefully we'll get a replay of that one in a second, but Ridgway finding himself down pit lane with a penalty after that.
Well, he's got the black and orange mechanical flag anyway, so it doesn't matter. His race is run right now, and Rekov's isn't, but crucially will need to come in to get a new rear wing on the back of that car. Still enough structural integrity to go through, and they're going backward, then trying to keep things in check. But this is the issue that you find when quicker drivers try and go through and drivers that don't qualify. Radice having the fastest lap of the race then set at a 1:33.0. Keep an eye on tyre life. That's going to be important because we know that this is a place that, because there is little to no elevation change around this circuit, it's flat, you get a lot more wear.
I'll dispute that one just a little bit. We have at least some elevation change up and down through Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel. And then, of course, going up the hill over at Stowe. But yeah, that's about it in terms of elevation. Silverstone, of course, being an ex-World War II RAF airfield, finds itself being on relatively flat land. But Jacob Reed still leading the way from Eduardo Radice. Volta Lux still following both of them through. And as we've ticked off lap 2 and we're halfway through lap 3, I think, Sperry, that means DRS is enabled.
It is, and we're heading towards the straights. By the way, Mark van Dalen's lost the place to George van Rensburg, so battle of the vans. My van's better than yours. George van Rensburg finds himself ahead at the moment, but on the hanger straight, you can see here trying to get up 310 kilometers an hour from Eduardo Radice, but I don't think was very much using the energy recovery system in its play. He was harvesting a long way down the straight, so I think he's happy to sit in line for a moment. Branch is under pressure here as he looks at Florian Kammeyer trying to jump up into 4th position. Remember, Florian Kammeyer is very much in this championship hunt at the moment. He is P4 in the championship and looking to try and score some points. P3, sorry, in the championship, trying to score points. He's 41 off the race lead, and it's been a series for Florian Kammeyer so far that he's been, at least over the last couple of rounds of the championship, having to fight a little bit.
Kammeyer, though, going to have the advantage of DRS and a bit of the energy recovery system if he wants it. If he makes this overtake, it will be the first 5 car numbers in order as he goes down the inside of Dennis Branch. And just like that, cars 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stay in that order. But we do get a chance to talk about it at least once a race, Barry. That ERS management that's such an important part of getting maximum race pace out of these cars. Balanced, attack, build are the 3 modes you've got to choose between during a race. You can use that build mode when you've got slipstream, when you've got DRS, to give yourself a battery advantage over the car in front. Then you can choose to turn the energy up to balance, to attack, to deploy all of that energy later down the straight to give yourself a speed boost and a pace advantage over the car in front and make those overtakes stick. When we have the likes of Radice and we have the likes of Branch in slipstream, in DRS, we will see that red rain light on the back of the car blinking, and that means that car is saving energy. But Dennis Branch doesn't seem to be deploying too much of it right now as he is coming under immense pressure from 6th place Ronaldo Augusto.
And remember as well, they're only allowed 4 changes of that mode as they go around each lap, so they have to be choice in terms of the way that they go about business at the moment. Jacob Reed now with the fastest lap of the race and doing a great job, and Branch looking back at Reynaldo Augusto, trying to figure out his way through, as behind that, George van Rensburg through on Kent Nielsen. That's now George van Rensburg upper place in this race, to 7th place. Kent Nielsen down to 8th, and we'll look at Victor Awad, another one of the Brazilian contingent that is there trying to make the move, with Mark van Dalen in tow, looking to try and get themselves into position. Searching around at Brooklands, wide goes Kent Nielsen, and then looking to attack again, coming off of Luffield corner through the small kick right of Woodcote to go through. Remember, keep an eye on those track limits as well, because it's very easy to try and think you can take advantage. A little pier to the inside from Awad at Cox corner, but not enough to find a move.
Yeah, Kent Nielsen down in P8, but doing a fantastic job to hold on to that 8th place, being the only car inside the top 10 to start on that hard compound tyre. Only one car has got through on him, and that's George van Rensburg just in front. It's going to be a bit of a waiting game for Kent Nielsen, who needs to wait for that crossover between the mediums and the hards before he starts to see any sort of pace advantage. But I think choosing that tyre is quite indicative that we are going to see that 12 car on the one stop here today.
And already just 9 seconds off of the race lead through 6 laps. So that gap comes up to about 28 seconds. That will be a case of he will be outside of the leader's range, but the fact that he's still running very close to the likes of George van Rensburg, he is a threat, I would say, at the moment, to Cam Ayer, Reynaldo Augusto and Dennis Branch, with Augusto now up through into P number 5. And getting that pass done into, guess where, Stowe corner, which has been the best place to see moves out there over and over again. Nielsen watching behind, because Awad will have the DRS, but crucially Kent Nielsen was within a second of George van Rensburg over the detection line, and it's going to be stay as you were, with Awad behind and Mark van Dalen watching as well there in P10.
Yeah, Awad looking a lot more comfortable in his car at the moment. Kent Nielsen just struggling to place the car exactly where he wants to. That lack of grip on that harder compound tyre just making Nielsen work a little bit more to get the car into the corner. You saw how wide it went through Copse just there, with Awad able to take that much tighter racing line and gain just a couple of tenths on the car in front. The gap between those two at around 0.4 of a second right now. Nielsen still with the DRS on George van Rensburg, but give it a lap or so and he is going to be an absolute sitting duck for Victor Awad to just sweep around at some point on the line.
Yeah, if that move can be made, then it will certainly help. But you're seeing a little bit of this DRS train effect in play. Everyone's got the rear wing flap on every other car that's there, and it really does make life difficult. Your biggest mover in the race right now is Isaac Ruska at the moment. He's up 9 places in this one. Started at the back in 22nd, is up to 13th, and not a million miles off the back of Apariari and Nick Burke, who are on the fringes of the points at the moment. So certainly working to try and get what they want. Nick Burke up 3 spaces of his own at the moment and doing everything that's needed. Gerard Burrell also up 4 in 15th.
Yeah, Ruska finding himself in a good amount of clean air right now, which gives him a chance to just start to tick off those laps. His best lap so far, 33.7, which is comparable to the likes of George van Rensburg and Dennis Branch. And again, with all that clean air in front of him, he can just start to walk up to the back of that train of Apariari, of Burke, of Van Dalen. Maybe in the pit stop cycle is going to be where we see the Swede start to move up the order a little bit. The gaps up and down the field, though, staying nice and tight. 3 tenths between each car inside the top 3. And similar sorts of gaps from 7th down to 10th, as you've seen some at Sperry.
Yeah, and that is Eduardo Radice pulling the pin and moving back to the lead, as Jacob Reed had nothing to defend against it, moving in through Stowe corner at the Vale and now into the double apex right of Club corner. It's a case where Eduardo Radice now has that control. Jacob Reed in second and Volta looks in third. But I do want to touch on Jacob Reed at the moment, because here's a fascinating reason why drivers have to be so fearful of Jacob Reed, and that's his day job. Data scientist. That is a deadly combination to see of a driver who is very analytical.
Oh yeah, someone that can look at graphs and draw conclusions from lines compared to straight lines in a field like that is someone who can find pace from absolutely nowhere. And it's why Reed has been so consistent and so fast over the last couple of seasons. But Eduardo Radice has really put the pressure on here in 2025. And it's that element of control that the Italian has really had in his sort of repertoire of weapons he can use against Reed. where he's more than happy to relinquish that control at the start of the race and just back off his own pace a little bit, save his tires, save his energy, and just do what he needs to do to survive the opening laps. But once he's comfortable that he's got a tire advantage over the car in front, once he's comfortable that the lead group has built a gap to everyone else behind, that's when he decides to go. That's what we saw at Red Bull Ring last week, and that is the strategy he is repeating here today, and it is already working.
And no surprises, everybody today is on the medium downforce package out there. No skinny wings, so to speak, but everybody there with the flat bevel on the rear wing, which is the great indicator that you don't need anything more than what you've got. But Eduardo Rodis, what a lap he's having out there at the moment. That there was a 132.9 for reference, and that put him 9/10 of a second clear then over the line. So Jacob Reed has a car that, in my view, is a lot more difficult when it comes to the dirty air. Remember, Jacob Reed had to get the run out of turn 4 to go and get that place. We haven't seen Jacob Reed have to fight through this, and already you can see that gap, 9/10 of a second, immediate troubles right now. And I think Volta Lux is going to be very, very hungry to get by, because he's got a car that works well in these sorts of conditions.
Yeah, but you got to think about the position that Jacob Reed has been in for the last 8 laps or so before he got overtaken by Eduardo Rodis. He was the car that was punching the hole in the air for both of the drivers behind him. And if you think about oval racing, the car that's in front of that train is going to be burning a lot more fuel over the course of the stint. It's a similar thing here in these Formula One cars. But instead of burning more fuel, what they're having to do is burn more energy, because you need that 160 extra horsepower from the hybrid system to push the car through the air, to maintain the speed and maintain your advantage over the cars behind. And Reed hasn't had the chance to switch into that build mode yet, whereas Rodis has basically been there all race long. So, as you said, Sperry, when he pulled the pin, he put that car into balance, or maybe even attack, made the move work, got into clean air, and then was able to keep the car in that higher deployment mode and really stretch that gap just outside of a second for Eduardo Rodis now. Coming through the DRS zone, is Reed still going to have the DRS? Let's find out.
Well, we'll look back at George van Rensburg here as Sebastian Rekov, who's 2 laps down and is effectively now 3 laps down. The last runner is down into the pits then, trying to get service sorted before going out again, but it's a long, long stop as Awad now having to think about things with Mark van Dalen there. Nick Burke sniffing about for a couple of points here on lap 10 of 52 and struggling about a little bit through Aintree Corner, and now it's about Charge, who's going to attack, and everybody then harvesting the battery, not wanting to move and make a position through that next section of road. And I think everybody is sitting around at everyone else going, well, come on, one of us is going to have to blink at some point and come down into the pits, and we all know it's not going to be Kent Nielsen there in 8th position. He is the toughest battler as well when it comes to the iRacing Grand Prix Tour. He is not afraid to get his elbows out, and he makes overtaking him the toughest challenge in all of racing.
Yeah, I'm sure he is in a pretty comfy spot right now, as it looks like those mediums are just starting to lose a little bit of pace, and it's starting to go in his favor. He was almost dropped by George van Rensburg in the early phases of this stint, but was just able to keep within the window of the DRS on George van Rensburg and keep himself in that spot to try and make that strategy work. Dennis Branch starting to fall backwards as well, as he has become the head of this train that we've been following all race long, goes deep through the Vale chicane, is going to open up an opportunity for George van Rensburg down the Hamilton straight, down into turns 1, 2 and 3. Keep an eye on the South African, because it could be time for an overtake.
Well, keep an eye out on this, because Dennis Branch has been struggling, 8/10 loss over the course of that last lap, and you're starting to think that George van Rensburg is starting to bring himself in. George van Rensburg, his 61st start in the Grand Prix Tour, doesn't get a great drive at all actually, going through Aintree. His best finish is a 3rd place in his career, and that was done 2022 Indianapolis. Outside of that, he has peppered each and every position down from 3rd position all the way down to 15th on at least one occasion over the course of his career, with 17 retirements to his name, but also 3 fastest laps. He's got 170 points. He is only 35 points off of Emil Bernstorff, who is the current holder inside the top 10.
Van Rensburg still applying that pressure to Branch as they make their way through Maggots, Beckett, and Chappell for the 11th time. He's going to have the advantage of DRS on the run all the way down to Stowe Corner. And we've seen how much Branch has been struggling to extract pace from that car. I think just not able to keep those Pirelli tyres alive. But in the background, it's Victor Awad who's going for the move around the outside of Kent Nielsen. But Nielsen defends to the inside, and Awad can't find the grip on that preferential outside line. And Nielsen is going to hold on for now, but it looks like Awad has decided maybe it's time to get a bit of a shift on, throw the cat amongst the pigeons to see if we can get this train moving a bit.
Well, it was so clever by Ken Nielsen. He gave just one car width on the outside for Victor Awad, who just could not commit to the turn-in. And just like that, there was no room to make it. He's managed to find himself a way back to Ken Nielsen here. But it's about, are you going to find that? And if you do have a long go over on the hangar straight, you look around at someone like Victor Awad, how many laps is he going to have to spend to build the battery back up to have another go like that?
Well, we'll have to wait and see, and we'll keep an eye on that blinking red rain light that we so often talk about in these races to see when he does decide to have another go. But it may be in his best interest to just hold position for now, get to the end of the stint, and maybe try a bit of an undercut. We've only got 6 laps to go in this first stint.
Well, keep an eye on Jacob Reed because he's fallen outside of a second, and Volta Lux might think that this is now his chance to try and go through. He's not quite close enough to make it, or is he? Late as late can be. Jacob Reed, very passive, lets him have it. Volta Lux now moves up to second position and knows that he's very much in this race and has a big lockup going in through the Vale, keeps it together, but right now it's a case of scientist versus engineer, and engineer on top.
Yeah, it was a brilliant choice from what it looks to go for that move down into Stowe Corner, but Reed just choosing to not get involved in a scrap with Lux this early on in the race. Deep into turn 3 goes Lux, and it's going to ruin his run through the loop and up through Aintree. We'll see if Jacob Reed can make his way back by, but it's now Lux that's got clean air in this race for the first time. 2.1 seconds is the gap between him and Radice, but Reed is closing with the DRS, but not able to get close enough to take that position back. It's going to be about half a lap's more patience before Reed's going to get another chance, but he needs to stay with the Austrian, and his car just seems to be struggling in that dirty air.
Well, this is a critical phase of the race because if they keep struggling like this, they will allow Eduardo Radice to run away here in the backyard of Jacob Reed, and that is a huge statement to be found. We know that Jacob Reed is a master of Italian track, but if Eduardo Radice can say, well, you can take the Italian tracks, I'll be good at British ones, then that's going to be a great statement that we'll see nearer the end of the season when we've got the likes of Monza on the horizon.
Yeah, honestly, I love that as a storyline, to see Jacob Reed take Eduardo Radice's first home win in Imola, and then see Eduardo Radice snatch that back here in Britain. We've still got, and Mugello, goodness gracious me, I forgot about that one. But we've still got 40 laps before that one's decided. There's a lot more scrapping to go on up and down the field, as Dennis Branch has finally been overtaken by Van Rensburg. And Kent Nielsen is looking like he wants to have a go as well. Down the inside, chicane, and there's contact at the apex of turn 14. The American finds himself off the road in the gravel, where we've seen so many cars in this circuit's history dragging the stones onto the circuit and creating a very slippery surface for all the cars that come through next.
Well, that was a tenuous dive down the inside. Kent Nielsen was never close enough to command the corner, and ultimately it's Dennis Branch who takes the hit. Victor Awad gets tipped over by Mark van Dalen, second time today. Mark van Dalen's been caught up in an incident. He was caught up with Amir Ali Salhi earlier on in the race. So for Ali Shahi, it was not great, but there for Victor Awad, that was really tough because Van Dalen just thought, right, doors open, and there was a massive amount of netcode actually in that incident. Van Dalen was halfway in the car before contact got registered. Here's Dennis Branch's view of what happened. Kent Nielsen searching for the inside. I don't think he ever got near enough.
No, didn't have enough overlap to be given room there, but Dennis Branch comes down to the apex anyway, and it's one of those where you've sort of got to decide, would you rather be in the right or in the race? Dennis Branch decided he wanted to be in the right, and I think Ken Nielsen maybe carrying a little bit of damage from that one. But this one I just found so strange when watching it back on the replays. Auer to the inside of turn 3. And it doesn't really look like Van Dalen's going for anything too aggressive. It's just a bit of speed differential between him and Victor Auer. The cars end up in each other, and it's the Brazilian that ends up off the road.
Well, his look on board as Nick Burke is in trouble now with repairs, and he's missing a front right tyre. That's the hit, so we're going to have to find what's happened to Nick, because he's had a big 3-wide moment going over to Stowe corner, and Kent Nielsen was trying to pinch along, probably didn't realise Mark Van Dalen was there, and Nielsen has caused an almighty hit that's gone through. They were trying to thread the needle. Nielsen was pinching the gap down, and look at this, they go through here. We'll take a good look at this here. 1, 2, 3, they fan out. Nielsen tries to pinch along, and there's the contact over the nose.
Yeah, Kent Nielsen not knowing he's 3 wide on the way into Stowe corner there, which was probably the main cause of the contact between Nick Burke and himself. But it's Burke that comes off the worst of that in the barrier down pit lane. It's a tricky one for Nielsen this early on, who has been the driver who's caused 2 incidents in the space of 2 minutes. Here's a replay from the start of the race with Alashani going for a spin out of the loop, and it was contact on the way into turn 1. No, it was through turn 3 that caused that rear wing to fall off, and then it was all over after that. No rear downforce.
Yeah, turn 1, the contact there as they went through, and as quickly as that, in fact, I'll correct myself, it wasn't Mark Van Dalen who made that hit. I think in the end, the contact of the wing going off was Edward Apariari there for Amin Ali Shahi on debut. Well, welcome to the iRacing Grand Prix Tour. Enjoy your stay. This was Robert Ridgway's incident early on, so we've got a little bit of a time to look away at some of these. And that's Borgia all the way in, going over the top of Sebastian Rekov's tyre and completely T-boning away through. Lyle Pina scampering by everyone.
Yeah, just really getting lucky with that one to get away and not make any contact. Here's the replay. Rekov moving to the inside in avoidance after Sergio Boyer had already committed to that inside line, and then there was just absolutely nothing that the Spaniard could do in that one. Here's Nielsen defending from, I think that was Van Dalen, down into, I'm forgetting my corner names already, down into Brooklands. And that's what I think lost in the... I love this track, but every now and again, the corner names just disappear from my head, and I don't know why.
Well, Ken Nielsen has had to come in to change his front wing, so he's converted from that 1-stop hard to medium now to a 2-stop soft. Oh, that's troublesome. They're going through. That is Isak Ruska for a half spin coming through Luffield. It's so easily done as he was losing it just as he was thinking about trying to put the power back down. Car not settled.
Yeah, doing his best Carlos Sainz impression there. He lost the rear end in the exact same corner in the first practice session in real life today, which of course F1 back in its home, as Jacob Reed actually comes down pit lane 1 lap early. He was about 9/10 of a second off the back of Volta Lux and not really making much progress up to the back of the second place car. He's decided to dump off those medium tires, probably jump onto a set of softs, and then try and get that middle stint right out of the way. We'll keep an eye on that one, because that's going to be an interesting turn of the strategies.
Yeah, so on the Jackson off, 4.5 seconds it will be, and he's going to come out pretty close here to this group of battling. Gerard Burrell, Lyle Pina. Oh, this is horrible for him. He's got to get through them all. Paul O'Regan, who right now is in 10th place. He can't get enough of it right now. Jacob Reed needed no traffic, and look at how he dices going through at the loop corner, through Aintree, straight by Paul O'Regan. Now we'll get a bucket of DRS to work with here, and needs to figure out a way to get by out there on track. So this is a critical moment here. He can't afford to get held up, and now he needs a big Luffield corner and maybe attack his way through Lyle Pina off the exit and go through for Cops. Oh, he'll get it done immediately. Look at that. Lyle gives him all the room.
Yeah, I'll see what Reed was going for on that strategy call, but realistically, he needed to give that one another lap to make sure he was clear of Burrell, of Pina, of Paul O'Regan and that's just not happened. Voltalog's going to come down pit lane, as you said, Sperry, and will come out relatively close to this group. Keep an eye on that gap between Gerard Borrell, see if we can get a track map up for you to show exactly how close they are. Reed to the inside of Stowe, side by side with Borrell, takes that 8th place on the road. You can see down pit lane is Voltalux. Jacob Reed coming into the Vale chicane now. So how close will these two be on pit exit?
Well, the question's going to be how good is Lux's stop, because he needs 4 seconds and then gets straight up to speed, 4.2. He gets immediately up onto the power and getting speed, and this is going to be really tight between them here. There goes Jacob Reed, just, and I mean just, getting ahead. 3 passes in a lap to hold, and Mark Van Dalen is in all sorts of trouble with his tyres right now, having to defend, and this could really unlock an opportunity. On the exit, there goes one. Lux is going to have to wait out of Aintree Corner onto the Wellington Straight to try and find this move, and should make the lunge down the inside here into the left-hander of Brooklands. He gets aggressive through. Van Dalen gives him all of the space and just about holds it to get that through. So well done, but that's a big one. Victor Awad also in.
Yeah, as much as Reed has been struggling this season, that is the true mark of a champion. Makes a brave strategy call, puts himself in a spot where he has to make the move, and still gains time on the car in front of him. Voltalux had bags of clean air in front of him on that in-lap, but still wasn't fast enough to stay in front of Jacob Reed, who was fighting through 3 cars who hadn't made a pit stop yet and who weren't as fast. Speaking of pit stop, Eduardo Radice in for the first time from the lead.
Yeah, and for Eduardo Radice, he just needs a calm stop right now, knowing that he's playing a 2-stop game, and a driver, of course, who had that victory taken away late in at Austria. We got more takers in. George van Rensburg decides he can only go this far. Florian Kameyer now becomes your race leader overall. Radice has just left the pit, and by comparison, Jacob Reed and Edward Apariari are behind. So that's a big pit stop, and again, Eduardo Radice is there, but Jacob Reed has halved the gap over the course of that pit stop by going in a little bit earlier. He's got to clear Edward Apariari now, and he has to sit and wait through Aintree once more. And so now it becomes a case of Jacob Reed. Wrong place, wrong time. Ken Nielsen with the fastest lap again, but for the moment, it's Eduardo Radice who's going to look around and see that it's Jacob Reed now who is right there again.
Here comes the tricky bit now, though, because Reed needs to have brought those tyres in nice and gently, and we've seen over the course of the season, he's a driver who struggles to do that. Think back to Phillip Island, where he ran those tyres so hard in the early phases of that stint just to gain time on Eduardo Radice, but they fell so far away from him that he had absolutely no chance of defending. He needs to make sure he doesn't find himself in a similar spot here, but he also knows he wants to be back in front of Radice, back in control of this race and back in that clean air. The Italian has had time to get those tyres up to temperature now, but Reed is going to have a lot trickier job to get that done, as his tyres are just going to retain that little bit of a disadvantage as the stint goes on.
In the first half of this season, it's been unstoppable force meets a movable object out there in this one. A good call out to Gorilla Monsoon, who brought that together. Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, WrestleMania 3. But for Jacob Reed, another fastest lap of the race comes through, a 31.1, and he is hunting. Look at him. He's immediately onto the back of Eduardo Radice, who's trying to get the temperatures up in terms of his tyre life, takes a wider line going through the loop, and Jacob Reed is so switched on to what his tyres are doing. Where is he going to find this move? He's going to choose against making the pass here into Brooklands. He's not using the battery here, so it looks like hanger straight it will be.
Yeah, he is saving. Reed's car placement, though, looking much more confident compared to Eduardo Radice, who's just a touch all over the road at the moment. It's a good exit from Luffield for Radice, though, who extends that gap to half a second. Both cars regenning or derating some of that energy and not deploying, but it's Maggots, Beckett's, and Chappell in front of your net lead 2 cars, and Reed has been struggling in that dirty air all day long. He might have made a front wing change in the pit stop that might help him in the dirty air. We'll see how it unfolds, but 0.8 of a second is the gap between your current 3rd and 4th place drivers. Reed isn't going to be able to get close enough to make a move, but this is where the battery games come into play. If that driver of the number 1 car is confident that he can stay close to Radice in that dirty air without using the battery, he will do that. But if the first stint's anything to go of, it's going to be a tricky job for your reigning champion.
Yeah, and behind them, Volta Lux will be hoping that these two come together because he is the highest scoring points holder in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour without a race win. And that tells you something that you want to know about how it goes. In comes Lyle Pinar to make his first stop on lap 21 of the race, and so we expect that will be onto a set of soft tyres. So keep an eye still. Edward Apariari and Paul O'Regan, two drivers on hard tyres who are expected to go at least over halfway. Gerard Burrell still to come in and make a stop as well, so keep an eye on him too. So 5 then yet to stop, including Augusto and Kamai, who are nearly a full pit stop back on these two dueling championship leaders.
That was the tricky thing as well for Reed to make that spot up on Apariari, is he was on 18-lap-old hard tyres, a tyre that already isn't as fast and was already losing grip. Just meant that Reed had to back off so much through entry. But speaking of backing off, someone who isn't doing that right now is Isaac Ruska down the inside of the loop on Lyle Pinar, who's just come out of pit lane. And the squeed putting the pressure on Dennis Branch, who's been, as we said, Sperry, falling back all race long, down in P13 at the moment, and just doesn't seem to be able to extract the race pace from the car that he did in qualifying. It's a very different set of skills to get the Mercedes W13 round a lap fast in qualifying, because you can just hammer the tyres and use all of the grip corner to corner. But as soon as you get into race trim, there's a balance to find with exactly how fast you can go. Of course, we are running a lot heavier on fuel right now, but the fastest lap of the race so far is a 1 minute 31.030 with a pole time of what was a 1 minute and 28. So we're probably 3.5 seconds off as fast as we could be going. And a good chunk of that is on just keeping the tyres alive.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be very telling as they go. George Van Rensburg's gone through on Ken Nielsen, but look at Eduardo Rodis now, who is right behind Reynaldo Augusto. This is for position, this is for second, and look how desperately he wants to make this move. He goes down the inside at Copse and gets it done. He needed to use a lot of battery to make that move, and now for Jacob Reed, he can't immediately follow, so he'll wait for the hanger straight for the chance to make that pass, and he'll be waiting through Beckett's, now the right, leads to Chapel Corner, and he has to hold, and look, oh, he almost has to lift out of it then, off of the exit. Now he'll use the battery on the car and the DRS around the outside. He'll have to go and make it done. Easy as that. That's just tyre life showing, and that was key, the fact that Reynaldo Augusto now departs ways out of fourth.
Yeah, so Eduardo Rodis then proving you can, and it does happen that you can overtake at Copse Corner. Who would have thought? Jacob Reed find himself stuck behind Reynaldo Augusto through Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel, and it was such an inspired choice from Rodis to go down the inside of Copse there and make up that position, because he knew he would put Jacob Reed in a spot where he was in dirty air of a much slower car on much older tyres, and would really have to back off a sector of the track that requires commitment, that requires getting as much air as fast over the wings and under that floor as possible to maybe open that gap for Eduardo Rodis to run off into the distance. But Jacob Reed played that game to perfection, stayed just far enough back from Reynaldo Augusto to push through that sector, get the run up into Stowe, and then all the way around the outside of one of the scariest corners on the track.
Yeah, it's wonderfully done, but now look at that gap here to the race lead. 2 seconds now for Florian Kamar. Lap 23 of 52. He's really looking to extend out this stint and maybe do something very interesting. If you can make those medium tyres last, by my reckoning, another 10 laps or so, you might be able to go medium soft on a one-stop strategy to the end of the race. So this is all about thought process here from Florian. Can he baby the tyres about to save himself an entire pit stop?
Yeah, that's the thing that really is quite intriguing about watching these cars race, because you see some cars that seem to chew through their tyres, some drivers that chew through their tyres, but then others seem to just be able to keep them alive lap after lap after lap, and it's something I'm not quite used to coming from an endurance sim racing background, where at the moment on iRacing we're changing tyres every single stint over the course of a 6-hour race. But that's because, you know, we can, but the tires stay alive anyway. But these tires on the F1 cars are supposed to degrade. They're supposed to get slower over the course of their life, and there's supposed to be a cliff that they fall off eventually. But Florian Kammerer just seems to be able to keep them outside that window. He's probably not as fast as he could be right now, but he's still within a window where he can stick with the cars in front and keep enough pace in that car, in those tires, that he might be able to switch onto a one-stop strategy with the softs. Insane.
Yes, it is, but he's lost 2 places in 2 corners there. At Brooklands, Radice found his way through. At Luffield, Jacob Reed finding a slither of a gap and finding any which way to try and jump through, and he gets DRS back on Eduardo Radice, a jump back of 0.6 of a second on the lap to give himself a chance to hold on a little bit more. Voltalux is still there and closing in as well, is still lurking about, trying to pick up yet another podium finish this season to keep himself in the hunt. The one missed race that he had by going on holiday. Without that, add another 15 points into his championship, and I'd like to see championship points on the right-hand side of the screen in the next few moments' time, because that would have been enough for Voltalux to be right up there with Florian Kammerer and co. Looks still there, but at the moment, very much isolating himself. Best of the rest honours at the moment, as Kammerer is just holding the place, but is about to lose it here to Voltalux, who's going to get a good run here out of Aintree and onto that Wellington straight to the inside, and watch those points change, because that is one straight on through, gaining that, and boom, that is the case of a 6-point swing.
Yes, because who would dare go on holiday in the middle of the iRacing Grand Prix World Tour? But Voltalux making up that spot. And yeah, he could have been in championship contention at this point, but we're still only, we're not even at the halfway point of the championship yet. We need to finish this race before we're thinking about the final half of the season. So there's still another 12 races where anything can happen, where someone can find a sudden uptick in pace and start to challenge the drivers at the front of the field and see a different name challenging for first place. It could be Voltalux. He could start clawing back points hand over fist in the next 12 races, and maybe at the end of the season he'll be kicking himself about going and taking that holiday and not participating. But at the end of the day, it is just I won't say video game, it's just a sim. It's not real life. There's more important things out there, but Voltalux, I want to see you challenging. Get up there, dude. Let's see you fighting with Eduardo Radice and Jacob Reed on a more regular basis.
Paul O'Regan, by the way, threw on Gerard Borel over the last couple of laps. Mr. Top 10, never had a top 5, is currently in 6th place and only 7 seconds off of the back of Edward Apari-Ariyi, who is flying quite handsomely at the moment here in this one. And looking at the gap, then a 34.2 for Paul O'Regan on that last go by. A 34.2, by the way, for Edward Apari-Ariyi on that last lap by. Paul O'Regan gained a measly 0.003 of a second. He's gaining, but so too in the background there, George van Rensburg and Reynaldo Augusto having a bit of a scrap.
And they certainly are. Apari-Ariyi coming under all sorts of pressure from, oh, where are we? From Reynaldo Augusto, just behind. I'm losing track of my drivers here, but Van Rensburg and Augusto on the same tyre, having pit 4 laps apart or so. We saw Augusto getting in the way of Jacob Reed and Eduardo Radice. Well, it was 3 laps ago at this point, but Augusto wants to find himself inside that top 8, in that clean air, and starting to close the gap on Gerard Borel. But again, I still want to keep an eye on that fight with Paul O'Regan, with Edward Apari-Ariyi, because I am loving the amount of drivers that seem to be on that one-stop strategy. You can see a very clear window of them just there in the middle of the top 10. Kammerer, Apari-Ariyi, O'Regan, Borel all haven't stopped yet, and we are past the halfway point of the race as Augusto to the inside of George van Rensburg and is clear before they even made it into the corner, is able to sweep back, take the race in line and make the spot. But one stop's out there on track today, and their window isn't even open yet.
No, and that is telling that their window isn't quite there. I've just looked at Jacob Reed's last lap. He just did a 33.3, which was 1.3 seconds slower than Volta looked. And I think there he's had a little bit of a troublesome moment, maybe a slowdown penalty or something of that ilk, which has cost him a little bit of time out there over the lap and has brought Lux in for second position. We focus down the field right now as there was a map of where everybody was out there on circuit. Ronaldo Augusto on the back of Gerard Borel and Paul O'Regan. George Van Rensburg and Kent Nielsen also will want to try and find their ways through, but Volta Lux, you can see over those laps, it wasn't even a case of a lap that was too bad. It was a case of half a second here, half a second there, and 2/10 in the first sector. Now there's troubles here for Jacob Reed, because look out, here comes opportunity. Augusto through, but not yet for Volta Lux. And Jacob Reed is chewing through his tyres.
It's not even that. He's out of energy, Sperry. I just had a quick look back through at lap 26 to see why it was so slow. And he was getting about 100 meters into every straight. And that rain light was flashing. That is indicative of how hard your defending champion was pushing to try and stay with Eduardo Radiz. He's just completely run out of battery. And that's what's let Volta Lux close all the way in. Lux's pace has been a lot more balanced, a lot more managed. And he's now putting Reed under all sorts of pressure as he gets the DRS on the run up the straight, under the bridge. That got closes. And look how quickly it's closing. That is not on DRS. That is just the battery difference between these two cars. As Lux slips his way up the inside of Brooklands, gets the run through Luffield, and is going to be comfortably up in P2. Reed, I gotta say, is not managing this race really well right now.
No, and it's surprising to hear from a two-time champion at the iRacing Grand Prix Tour, all-time points leader, all-time wins leader, all-time poles leader in trouble. Borel losing out another one. That's George Van Rensburg through into Brooklands corner and getting that move done actually at Aintree then to completely make that happen. Borel representing Rwanda, it has to be said, for him at the moment. Still looking around because you can choose any flag in the iRacing flag system. And over in the Classic Series, I love what has been going on there, Taylor, because there is a whole, I would say this, a whole Sao Tome and Principe team.
Honestly, I'm absolutely here for it. It's a great change, I gotta say, for iRacing to finally introduce a proper flag system, because the clubs thing was always a little bit not outdated, that's not the word to use, but I don't feel like it truly represented the driver, because it was always based on where you were when you signed up for iRacing, and that isn't necessarily where you're from. And a lot of countries got weirdly grouped together. I think the two of the big ones off the top of my head being Iberia and the UK and Ireland. There's so many just within those two clubs on their own, so many unique cultures and identities, that it's so good that they finally get to be represented. And especially after last week, I'm sure the Scots, Welsh and Irish are so pleased that they don't have to represent themselves with a British flag anymore. I'm buzzing for them.
Well, that is great for them as they go through, but what it has also done away from, and it's more the American perspective, is that it's completely done away with the state system that was in play. And so everybody now is from the United States. You have to be a lot more switched on to as and where everybody is. Battle on, though, for Paul O'Regan. He's seen Ronaldo Augusto fly on through in the distance. Now it's the time of the South African George Van Rensburg to try and work out a way through. Most retirements versus never retired in the Grand Prix Tour, Paul O'Regan. He's always found a finish, and the only time he's run into troubles was Montreal a couple seasons ago, where he had himself an issue in the final 3 laps, but still got classified by being within 90% of finishing distance. So this is going to be a really interesting scenario now, as here comes GVR looking over outside line, because he's trying to get as much power on the exit as possible, get himself a lot more drive and attack at the Vale. Can't pierce it at the moment, so he waits for another chance at Destiny to move on up to P7.
I just got flashbacks there when you called him GVR to the first Chicago street race where Shane Van Gisbergen made his NASCAR Cup Series debut and won the thing, and none of the commentators could pronounce his name correctly, and you could hear them checking their notes just before they read his name out live on air. But Paul O'Regan, on that one-stop strategy, defending from George van Rensburg. It's 29-lap-old hards against 11-lap-old softs. Van Rensburg needs to get this move done and get a shift on before he runs out of tyre. O'Regan dutifully stays to the outside of the circuit, doesn't defend that one too hard as he knows George van Rensburg is not his race, showing a lot of patience, a lot of maturity to just run his own race and let the South African run off into the distance a little bit. But Van Rensburg up into 7th, 5.3 off the back of Ronaldo Augusto.
And you may have just seen in the background as well that Ken Nielsen threw on Gerard Burrell, who's trying this one-stop strategy on a medium tyre, which is madness.
I mean, you got to give him some credit. That is the craziest strategy call out on track at the moment, except for Florian Kamai coming down pit lane for the first time. He's got a little radio message of sorry being pinged out there. I'm trying to see if he's got any damage. But oh my God, look at that front left tyre.
It's gone, it's popped.
It's down to the carcass. I don't know if that's a puncture, but that is down to the carcass. 60 kilometers an hour down the pit lane. Yeah, it must be.
That is a blown tyre, and let's try and see where that tyre's gone. And I think it was heading into Copse Corner. No, it was before Copse Corner where that's happened. So somewhere along the lap, it has decided to just absolutely go. And I think he's been riding with that for a couple laps potentially out there. Yes, he has. So he'd done that lap 29 going in towards turn 3. So he got heavy over the curb on the exit and the tyre just let go.
Did someone say 70th anniversary Grand Prix 2020? Because I heard 70th anniversary Grand Prix 2020. Kamai then finally coming down pit lane to replace that absolutely ruined front left tyre to bolt on a set of softs. And you got to say, with when he's decided to pit, it does look like the driver of the 4 car has committed to the one-stop strategy. It's going to be tricky if his car's chewing up the mediums in a way that they were absolutely, completely dead on one corner after 29 laps. So we'll keep an eye on Kamai and see what happens over the course of the next 21. I don't know. I think this is going to be really tricky.
It will be tricky for Florian Kamai. He's come back out in 10th place right now, so he's got work to do. Gerard Burrell, Paul O'Regan, they're all expected to come in. Ken Nielsen and co will be there, but you'll probably have about a 5-lap margin on those who will be there and coming into the pits afterwards. So 4 seconds to chase down Gerard Burrell, but I don't think he's going to be going lightning fast to go and make those places. I am keeping an eye on Volta Lux's pace though, because on that last lap he was short by, he was quicker by a couple hundredths of a second. It's fluctuating in and between 3 and 4 seconds at the moment to Eduardo Radice, which means that he is not 100% unsafe. But look at that, 1.5 seconds there, as we were just there for the last about 20-30 seconds or so, coming off of Gerard Burrell, who's yet to pit.
Yeah, like you said, Sperry, keeping an eye on Volta Lux and keeping an eye on the front left tyre of Gerard Burrell, which seems to be a pattern of the day for the drivers on the one stop on the mediums. But Lux is doing a really good job to stay in the window of Eduardo Radice. We've seen so many times this season where Lux has been far enough off the back of the lead too that they don't really have to worry about making a mistake because they'll be able to hold on to their spots. But again, with the improvements that he's made over the 2025 season, it's meant that he's in a spot where he's keeping the pressure on Radice, on Reed, without really doing too much. 4 seconds off the back is enough that if Radice locks up, goes for a spin, he loses that position. And we've seen Radice is susceptible to mistakes, to errors. He got that black flag for incident points last time out at the Red Bull Ring, and Lux being there is enough to keep that pressure on as Awad down the inside of Stone.
Yeah, Victor Awad through on Mark van Dalen. This is for the last place is just on the outside of the Sim Speed Championship points. So this is 11th and 12th they're racing for. Awad now, the Brazilian, goes to 11th place and now has a little bit of work to do to move on for that top 10, because he's about 8 seconds back of Florian Kamai, but he'll be eyeing up Gerard Burrell, who's just about to lose that place now here in through turn 4 and on the exit of the corner. Here goes Florian Kamai. Look at it, it's as if he's standing still.
Yeah, big wiggle from Gerard Burrell as well as he turned into Aintree. I think that's one of the trickiest corners on the circuit from the exit of the loop and through that almost kink. It's not really much of a corner, especially in a Formula One car, but the thing that makes it difficult is that little straight as you get on the power is just so important for lap time because it leads onto, I want to say the longest straight in the circuit. I think the hanger straight's a little bit longer, but it leads onto a long straight with a DRS zone. So you need to maximize the exit from the loop through entry, carry the speed, carry the pace, and it does lead to little wiggles and little moments.
Well, this is a do-or-die style pit stop now for Jacob Reed. We expected him to come in first, but he's still leaving himself about 18 laps on this final stint to get it sorted. Through then will go as Paul O'Regan makes his first stop into the pits. Edward Apariari as well. Went Kent Nielsen, followed by Florian Kammeyer trying to work his way through as Jacob Reed will depart the pits just behind Reynaldo Augusto. So he'll be about 35 seconds off the race lead, which indicates to me he's got about 7 or 8 seconds to chase down Radice and about 3 seconds to chase down Volta Lux.
And all I can throw in Reed's direction right now is just be patient. Bring those softs in gently. Don't push them too hard. Wait for when the car's in front of you and pit, and then start to go. He can't push those tyres too early because they're going to be gone by the end of the race. Kent Nielsen on the defense from Florian Kammeyer, but can do absolutely nothing as the German slots himself down the inside to take P6. Remember, Kammeyer is on that one-stop strategy. Stopped after 30 laps on those medium tyres that were completely gone on the front left corner by the time he came down pit lane, and is now fighting for his life to make up for that time as Eduardo Radice reacts to Jacob Reed, feeds Volta Lux out into the lead, and is maybe perhaps feeling a bit of pressure to make a strategy call based on what the Austrian driver is doing.
It's an overcut now for Volta Lux, who I think is playing this one very much by the book, and this will put Eduardo Radice in an interesting place. He should retain the second position out there as he leaves the pits without any dramas at all, passing the iRacing Porsche first safety car in the process, and Reynaldo Augusto a fair ways away down the road, running through the opening few corners and through at Village. They now start to figure out. Kammeyer, by the way, trying to find a way past George van Rensburg as Kent Nielsen has hit the pits. So can Florian Kammeyer now move up inside the top 5? He'll have to wait for Reynaldo Augusto as well to pit, but that would put Kammeyer back into 4th position, which is the goal at this moment in time.
0.2 of a second then is the gap between him and George van Rensburg. Van Rensburg still due to come down pit lane, and again without that DRS can't defend from Kammeyer, who once again slots it up the inside of Brooklands and takes the lead in, not the lead, sorry, takes the position into Luffield. It's a top 5, 8.3 seconds off Jacob Reed, and it's a good spot for Kammeyer. He's kept those softs alive long enough now. Let's see if he can hold on to them for the next few laps.
Reynaldo Augusto having flashbacks of earlier on in this race because Jacob Reed is trying to set this one up, coming out of Chapel Corner and onto the hanger straight. And of course, this is a former World War II airfield. And right now, Jacob Reed's got a Spitfire as he runs down the inside. In comes Volta Lux from the race lead. Lovely pass on Reynaldo Augusto. Eduardo Radice is the focus, but Lux is going to be long behind after he makes that stop because he's got to wait in the box for 4 seconds and get up to speed. There goes one. Now where is Augusto and Reed? Because Reed here is going to start flying by up on speed as they go out of the corner. Jacob Reed jumps again.
Yeah, well, we'll keep an eye on this one again, but Reed with a strategy call to get himself up into P2 as he really is fighting Lux to a certain degree in the SimSpeed TV Championship, and he does find himself in front of Lux yet again on the road. He seemed to be a little bit more patient in the opening laps of this stint, so I think he's learned from that middle phase of this race how to keep those soft tires alive a little bit longer. It puts the pressure on Lux, puts the impetus on Lux to bring those tires in as gentle as Reed did and give himself something to fight with at the end of the stint. But as it stands, the Brit, your defending champion, has pulled out of DRS range on Volta Lux and can now maybe breathe a bit of a sigh of relief as he's got to be looking to just bring home that P2.
Well, that's all he's got to think about right now. Second place is the goal, and Jacob Reed is lightning fast over the opening laps of a stint. The key here is, after that, who's going to find what's needed? George Van Rensburg's come out of the pits, by the way, and he's come out in 10th place, right with Kent Nielsen. So this is going to be a case of Kent on that 2-stop, Van Rensburg on that 2-stop, and they're together now to the end of the race. They've got Paul O'Regan just in front, and Jason Green out there on the hard tyres still. Jacob Reed now with the fastest lap of the race. In comes Reynaldo Augusto to make his last pit stop, and get that, a 1:30.64 for Eduardo Radice, 1:30.61, Jacob Reed fractionally quicker.
Yeah, once again, these two keeping it absolutely as fine as paper between them. That is less than 300ths of a second in terms of lap time difference between the two in favor of Jacob Reed. It's not going to do much to close down that 5.5 second gap. Like we were talking about at the end of the stint, it's keeping that pressure on, keeping Radice in a spot where he has to drive perfectly for the next, call it 20 minutes or so if he wants to bring home this win. Reed might not be fast enough to win here today, like he wasn't at the Red Bull Ring last time out, but it is a mind game. It is a game of chess at over 180 miles an hour. Reed won it last time out, but it is Radice's move, and it's currently moving into check.
Isaac Ruska then making the pit stop and coming back out and away again behind Mark van Dalen. So that will be 13th place for Isaac Ruska, the Swede, the biggest mover in the field out there here at the moment, with Paul O'Regan in 8th place, thinking about, can I still hold on to my top 10? Out there in that 8th place, Van Rensburg and Kent Nielsen will both want to get by, and then it's just, can I maintain the pace of Gerard Borel between now and the end of this race? Volta looks now setting the fastest lap of the race, wow. A 1:30.605.
I think I just saw someone off the road down at Chapel. It's Reynaldo Augusto, yeah. Off the road, down at Chapel Corner. We'll wind that back and see if we get a replay of what happened there, but what a strange spot to lose the rear end. I'm just having a look at it on the replay myself now, coming through the second part of Beckett's. Here it is from the TV perspective. Turns it in, gets on the curb, and the rear end just lets go before he gets down to Chapel Corner. He locks the brakes up dead early, slides it into the gravel, keeps it moving so he doesn't get stuck. But that car lets go so late in the corner.
I'm just thinking about, it's on the gear shift. It's on the gear shift, the upshift there from Reynaldo Augusto, as the car ever so slightly disengages the throttles to try and bring in that next gear. That's where it snaps and goes around, just as it changes on that hybrid V6.
Yeah, that's a really interesting moment there, because these gearboxes are specifically designed to keep that power transfer from the engine to the rear wheels completely linear. It's a double clutch gearbox, so by the time you upshift, the car already knows what gear it's about to go into. In real life, they always talk about learning the gears, and it programs into the car exactly what gear you're going to be asking for at what point, and it should keep that upshift into stick primed the entire way. So to see a disengagement that aggressive, a re-engagement that aggressive, is not only rare in real life, but something that really shouldn't be happening in sim.
It's a weird one for sure, but all that can be said is Reynaldo Augusto is put back to the last points paying position, as Jason Green has lost the place out now to Lyle Pinar, who is through into 14th position. Lyle, the South African, through on Jason Green, who's had some wonderful streaks of racing. He's been maybe a little bit less here than maybe we've seen over previous seasons, but Jason Green is the lifeblood of a series like this, always looking to try and find something out there, and Jason Green, once again, as far as this season will go for him, is going to be close again to the point, but still yet to score this season.
But that's not what it's about. We all want to score points. We all want to be in a spot where we can finish well in a championship. But at the end of the day, iRacing is all about going out there and having fun over, in this case, a realistic race distance. And I'm sure Jason Green is out there having the absolute time of his life. He's getting to push a virtual rendition of a real-life Formula One car around one of the greatest circuits in Formula One history. which is just something that 20 years ago wasn't possible in the way that it is now. And you've got to just take a step back sometimes, realize what's happened with the technology and with the way we enjoy motorsport over the last 5 years, and just recognize that this is what it's all about. It's all about the fun, it's all about the experience, and it's all about getting out there and just giving it a go.
Paul O'Regan now with the likes of what happened to Ronaldo Augusto for 1, and for 2, the pit stop of Isaac Ruska is now in 6th place. Edward Apariari, we've talked next to nothing about him all day. We talk about how it was his first top 5 last time out. He's about to go back to back at this rate.
Yeah, up in 5th place at the moment after a 4th place finish at the Red Bull Ring. Not only his first top 5, but is again making that one his best finish in iRacing Grand Prix Tour history. And I'm sure someone who wants to snatch that 5th place away from him today is Paul O'Regan. The difference in pace between those two right now, about 0.2 of a second in favour of Edward Apariari. But we talked about how a gap as small as 4 seconds is not really room for error at the front of the field. That applies down the order as well. So Edward Apariari has to keep that car between the white lines, has to keep it pointed in the right direction. As Paul O'Regan, George Van Rensburg, Kent Nielsen are all within that window that if he makes that mistake, finds himself off the road, he's going to fall out of the top, not only the top 5 really quickly, but he's going to drop all the way down to P8. But O'Regan leading this train yet again as he was last time out, and doing a great job of doing so. 0.5 of a second back to Van Rensburg. Van Rensburg with the DRS in the run up to Stowe.
Well, George Van Rensburg's going to start thinking about, am I close enough? And answers no for the first part. He might have a chance in the second part here to make it happen as Ronaldo Augusto goes through behind on Gerard Borel and moves on up into the 9th position then, making that pass. And I do want to turn attentions to P2 and 3 because as Isaac Ruska is through on Mark Van Dalen and up into 12th place, Van Dalen trying to attack back. There is Jacob Reed, and as expected, we've seen the script twice, and ultimately a play in 3 parts with the same result could be on the cards.
Bottlux having the run through Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel. Look how much Reed opened up the second part of those S's, but it's not enough to keep him out of the window for attack for Bottlux, who's in the slipstream, has the DRS open. Both drivers derating late on in the straight. To the outside goes Lux. Defending to the inside is Reed, leaving a car's width on the outside of the circuit. Lux doesn't make his way through at Stowe and has to wait another lap to have another go. 0.3 of a second, 0.2 of a second is that gap. The Austrian is under the rear wing of the Brit as we tick off the end of lap 41.
Well, Voltalux is there now, and he can pick and choose his moment if he wants to go up into second position and find a little bit more solace in 18 championship points. He's been second on 1 occasion already so far this season. That was over at Imola. He had to rely on the DNF of Eduardo Radice to pick that one up, but now he gets a great chance here. Jacob Reed, the Worcesterman, defends on the inside, and the engineer trying to find ways around the scientist, and at the moment it's the data scientist who can hold the defense nicely going through that section. But look again, that low traversing line coming through Brooklands Corner and Luffield. It gives another chance here for Jacob Reed to have to defend again.
I'm trying to figure out exactly what it was that put Lux in this position, because lap 41 was invalid for Jacob Reed, so he must have picked up some sort of slowdown or an off track that put him in that spot. But Lux now fighting for that second position, and this is going to be really important for the championship. Up to Stowe we come yet again. Reed in the middle of the road. Lux chooses the outside well alongside as they get into the corner. Lux looking for a run around the outside, can't get it done, and has to delay the move for yet another lap. Reed finally switched on as is defending brilliantly.
There were 2 big wiggles there for Voltalux, and I think the key there in that was that he hit a wall of dirty air on the outside. Couldn't do anything about it, and so great defense by Jacob Reed. He is deploying the battery perfectly, but here's the key. You can use the battery to defend. The issue is, the longer he tries to do it, the less he's going to recover back. And that will mean that Volta Lux is going to have a great chance. Wiggle through the middle then, and this might be the wake-up call that's needed. Look at the run, immediately defending underneath the bridge as they go now over to Brooklands. Around the outside, Lux did not have the conviction to go and make that move, to trust that Jacob Reed wasn't going to understeer out into him. So he has to lift off again, and Jacob Reed must now bring himself into a position of where am I going to have to defend, because Kops becomes an opportunity now for Volta Lux, who will follow in lockstep through the opening corner. He'll drop a car length here through this section, thinking about where he wants to go, where this move is going to be, and now through the S's once again, now through Beckett's corner, now looking to Chapel. Is there going to be another chance? But I think here, Jacob Reed's maybe got just enough clearance to go and make this move. Volta Lux has been trying hard. Outside line again to go and make this move. This time Jacob Reed's going to have to fight hard through the middle of the corner. Volta! Oh, pass, boy, pass. Here comes Jacob Reed, straight back at the Vale, trying to get it done. Pass, boy. That's brilliant. Now down the inside of the Vale. Oh, this is a fantastic lap of side by side. Still not done as they go towards turn one. Still it's there as a way you can find this pass. Still Jacob Reed tries to hold his nose in. Oh, incredible stuff. Looks on the outside now in towards turn three. Leaves just enough room, but he understeers wide. Move just made.
It was a great move around the outside of Stowe from Volta Lux to put himself in that spot, but Reed applying the pressure for 5 consecutive corners, just keeping the nose in, keeping Lux aware as they almost make contact down into Brooklands. Reed around the outside, Lux to the inside as Reed retakes the spot into Luffield and holds on to P2. Lux now getting the message that Reed is not going to take this one lying down. Into Kops they come, over 300 kilometers an hour, and the Austrian is going to have to do some work to make this one stick.
He's going to have to figure out which way is the right way out there, and I think he's needing a little bit of battery harvest going through this section of circuit here, the greatest chicane section in all of motorsport, which, believe it or not, was not invented until the early 1990s. Out there in motorsport history. Looks having a little look to the mirrors there on Jacob Reed, decides against making that move, but Volta Lux there. That was a hard-fought way to get through, but Jacob Reed, I'm going to say this, Rossi-like in the way that he was trying to defend, because what Valentino Rossi did in all of his MotoGP career was attack at the first point of opportunity you lose a place, and that was so Rossi-like from Jacob Reed.
Yeah, and I think Volta Lux could have been a lot more aggressive in a lot of those moves. Ronaldo Augusto picking up a black flag. It might be mechanical. No, it is an incident points drive-through penalty. But yeah, I think Volta Lux could have been a lot more aggressive there to try and hold onto the position from Jacob Reed. But this is a sim. We don't have the same visibility as they do in real life, as Reed defends to the inside, forces Lux to the outside, and then starts to close that door and move back to the outside. It is a big show of aggression from Jacob Reed, but as I was saying, the same awareness that we have in real life just isn't there in sim, as a lot of these drivers are operating on single monitors, and that could be a reason for Lux showing a little bit more patience in his move, leaving a little bit more room and just staying aware of all of the limitations of online racing.
Mark Van Dalen as well, black flag penalty for 17 instant points. They're catching a lot here at Silverstone, and again it's proving to be a difficult thing to deal with. Jacob Reed still holding himself off. He's counting down the laps. Lap 52 he's got to get to. This is lap 45, looking for lap 46. Again, trying to search around the outside for it is Volta Lux. Not there. Now he's going to go to the outside of the Vale, trying to find a move out there. Jacob Reed's having to pin his car to the middle of the road, but the key here is who is going to have the opportunity to say, I can get this move done. Volta Lux is looking for the perfect move and backing out at any point that it doesn't have anything to work otherwise. This is tough at the moment for him.
But I think it's making Reed think, like, look at how many times Jacob Reed is moving to the middle of the road, moving into a defensive position, and he's compromising his line through so many of these corners. I think the beauty of it is Lux can throw a move and be aggressive at any point and surprise Reed, and throw him out of step as he's almost trying to do in Brooklyn's, keeping a nose in.
Oh, he's got it.
Forces Reed to think about him as Lux keeps that nose along the inside. Reed into the marbles on the outside of Luffield. And just as I was talking about how Lux needs to surprise Reed, he does run down to Cops. Big deployment from Reed. Lux on the inside, maintains the position. What a move.
Yes, but DRS is going to be coming up and Jacob Reed's going to have it. At some point, we're going to have to go away from this and take a look at the replay of Mark van Dalen exiting pit lane because it's something that's ended his race outright, but it's now about drive and where that DRS is going to come into play. 4 lights on the dash, says Jacob Reed has got pace, and look at him, monster up to the back of Volta Lux, and now try and pin around the outside. He tries the same thing, he's a lot closer as he goes through, still got a line. Now as he comes to the Vale, now Volta Lux has got to be so switched on here as they go through Club Corner. It's a switch back again that comes through, big kick of oversteer, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. But Jacob Reed, Lux finally has his number.
Yeah, really measured run through the Vale chicane from Volta Lux there, who just slowed up that second apex enough to not give Reed the chance to switch back through Club Corner. It looks like it might be moved on for the Austrian now up into P2, but that gap's only half a second. We've got a DRS straight here. We've got a big flat out run between Luffield and Cops. This might not be over yet. Lux's tyres probably in a better position at this point. Reed hasn't managed this race too well so far, but in this later phase, Reed has been perfect in attack and perfect in defense. Let's see if that continues over the next 6 laps.
Really struggles off the exit of the corner though. He had to use all of his battery, dumped it going in towards Brooklyn to try and keep himself close, and that gap 6-7 tenths of a second. You're not close enough to make a move from that far back, so Jacob Reed is really going to have to dig down deep and bring himself into this one here as we are soon at 5 laps to go here at Silverstone. And for the moment, Volta Lux is eyeing up that second place and saying, I definitely can do what is needed here out there overall. Jacob Reed hunting late to the outside. Yeah. Oh, he caught him at the 11th hour and around the outside of Volta Lux. He gets the inside. Oh, that's so smart. Jacob Reed lollygagging about at 6-7 tenths of a second, sneaks his move back through again.
Lux just was confident that Reed was never going to get there on the run up to Stowe, but that overspeed came so late. Speaking of, there he goes to the inside of 1, keeping that pressure on Jacob Reed, trying to get that position back. But just to finish our point, Lux confident that he could stay in front through Stowe, realized so late on that he had underspeed compared to Jacob Reed. Reed gets to the outside alongside before braking and sweeps it around the outside of Stowe. But Lux with the overspeed yet again, clear before braking. Jacob Reed, absolutely no way to defend and no grip on the exit of the corners. This fight is giving us absolutely no respite.
Well, is this Jacob Reed burning the tyres to defend? Because I think it is, because he was one of the earlier takers to go down in. He's had to be aggressive on his tyre strategy, and Volta Lux, who's been a little bit more methodical about it, has certainly done a great job of holding himself steady. I'm sure we're probably not going to get now that Mark van Dalen incident. He threw himself in the barriers trying to get up onto speed as he went through. 7 tenths, 8 tenths now. The gap now finds itself as Jacob Reed's going to have to take the entire straight to try and bring himself back in on what is a big battle for second place, and he's not going to be close enough this time to go and get close. Meanwhile, in other places out there, Paul O'Regan now behind Kent Nielsen, who's moved up into 6th position, and so George van Rensburg now still trying to hunt down late, but for the moment Volta Lux I think might have it done and dusted. So this is the move. George van Rensburg, who's actually fallen behind, and this will be the reason why as he goes through looking for that path. And this is going to be interesting here, Taylor, because this is to the inside of Paul O'Regan, goes down the inside, gets the move sorted, but has now fallen back behind again.
Yeah, it's just made that move down into Stowe. So a lap later on is when that position does switch back and Van Rensburg finds himself a little bit down the order. We're going back about 7 or 8 laps in history here. So let's see how this unfolds. Still following George van Rensburg down into the Vale chicane, up through Club. It goes for a spin, actually, on that first apex, and it just lets Paul O'Regan and Kent Nielsen slip on through. And it is a late race mistake that drops Van Rensburg out of position. But here's Kent Nielsen through Chapel Corner, DRS open, hunting down Paul O'Regan down a straightaway. We've seen so many overtakes happen so far. O'Regan tries to break the slipstream, and it's a very aggressive move to the inside of Stowe that gets Nielsen up into that spot, up into 6th, and that's where he's been for the last few laps. O'Regan has a peek to the inside of Vale, but can't get back by. And here's that replay of Van Dalen's mistake on pit exit, Sperry.
Yeah, this is really tough for Mark Van Dalen because you've got to go on board for this. He's serving the drive-through penalty. He comes out off of the exit and watch this, tries to light it up. Oh, everyone's done that.
It's absolutely Romain Grosjean there. I think that was during a practice session back in, testing my memory there, 2018. Someone fact check me on that. We'll come back to it later, but a horrible, horrible way to end your race. And you can imagine for Van Dalen, that was probably all done because he had his foot flat on the throttle when he took the pit lane speed limiter off. And the car has no traction control. It's all done by how much you modulate the throttle underneath your right foot. And Van Dalen just asking a little bit too much of the rear axle. The rear tyres ends up in a spin into that barrier, and both tyres actually breaking off there, which is just almost a little bit embarrassing.
Well, gone is the word from Volta Lux. He's miles clear now of Jacob Reed as he goes to George Van Rensburg and co, because he's got Gerard Burrell there, and behind Burrell is Victor Awad. This is the race now for 8th, 9th and 10th at the moment. So those final SimSpeed Championship points, those extra little changes that go around again and again. Gerard Burrell, of course, has been racing a lot this season, Taylor, but with the number 22 on the car, lowest I rating in the field, so struggled to get into these top split races in consistent manners.
Yeah, but how cool is it to see 22 Formula 1 cars ripping it around Silverstone? We'll be seeing a little bit of that next year when Cadillac end up on the grid, but I think you said the I rating for the strength of field for this race was somewhere around 5,100, so you need, well, a lot to make it into this race. Gerard Burrell on 3,965, which after the reshuffle of the divisions earlier this week isn't even enough to be in Division 1 anymore. So as much as he's not scrapping for the outright race wins, he's still got to fight on his hands for the iRacing Grand Prix Tour at Division 2 Championship. So any finishing spot, especially in top split, when you can score so many points with a strength of field this high, is vital for the actual iRacing Championship.
We're about a lap and a half away from the end of this race. It is 2 laps to go for certain drivers, and Edward Apariari's top 5 is very much under threat. Kent Nielsen right now is searching for a top 5, and Kent Nielsen has been searching for a very long time for a top 5. He has not had one since, guess what, Silverstone last year.
And what a way to get it done a whole year later inside, well, the top 6 for now, but I don't know if he's going to have an opportunity to, well, he is going to have a chance to snatch that top 5. So he's putting the pressure on Edward Apariari. He's only got a lap and a half to get it done, but Kent Nielsen has been aggressive in attack all race long. Apariari already thinking about Nielsen in his mirrors, defending to the inside of Kopsa, basically from thin air there, which gives Nielsen a bit of a psychological advantage on this one. The gap drops underneath the second as they thread their way through Maggott and Beckett, and it's all in Nielsen's hands.
It is now, and for Kent Nielsen, he's got to close up enough, and Edward Apariari's got 1 lap to hold for back-to-back top 5 finishes out there. Kent Nielsen looking for his first one in a year. If the two come together, Paul O'Regan will be on track for his first ever top 5 finish, and it's all struggles on the exit of the Vale right now for Edward Apariari, and Kent Nielsen is on him like a rash here, middle of the road, half defending at turn 1. It's near flat as you go through here. That's not the place to defend. Turn 3 will be that place, and keep your eyes on that as they work through. Eduardo Radice, by comparison, just enters the hangar straight, and so going through turn 4, this drive is going to be so important for Edward Apariari, knowing he's got to absolutely run with what he's got along this straight. Kent Nielsen Nielsen trying to hunt this down and close it off, but for the moment, outside line searching for it is not quite there. In through the Vale for the final time. A 6-race drought so far for Eduardo Radice. Welcome back to the top step of the podium. Radice here on Retone soil will win. Looks will be a forlorn distant second. Jacob Reed will be the last spot on the podium, but please go back to the likes of Ken Nielsen, because this top 5 is not out of the woodwork just yet. Jacob Reed will come home third. A lonely fourth it will be for Florian Kammeier. But now here comes Ken Nielsen. He's got the run. He's got the launch. And Edward Apariari is going to have to use every trick in the book to go and get himself through. But Kent, who a year ago find himself his last top 5 finish, is now 2 corners away.
Nielsen only has to thread it through the Vale chicane and around Club Corner to take that top 5, but Edward Apariari running out of tyre on the final lap. No drive out of Chapel. Nielsen brings it home 5th, and Apariari only good enough for P6, and Victor Awad ending up black flagged on the final lap. Is that mechanical?
No, that's penalty. He came together with Burrell there at the Vale chicane, Taylor. So the two come together, and Victor Awad's not going to have time to serve it, so he's going to drop outside of the top 10, which means Isak Ruska is going to pick up 10th, because it'll be a time penalty of 40 seconds at the end of the race.
Yeah, there it is. Isak Ruska getting moved up into that 10th place. Lau Pina promoted to 11th, and Ronaldo Augusto up to 12th. So with a late race penalty, Victor Awad shuffled all the way down to 13th. And this is what happened between Awad and Burrell. Into the Vale chicane they come. Burrell very late off the curb on the exit of Stowe, as Awad just goes deep into Vale, leaving no room for Burrell on the outside. Probably would have been a contact 0x turned into a 1x for Burrell's off track, and that just pushed him over the incident point limit and got him that 40-second time penalty. That is devastating.
Yeah, no time to serve it, of course, being on the final lap of the race. So for Victor Awad, it's a drop of 4 places that he would really have hoped to have avoided there late on. But that will bring us then to conclusion of racing action, and everybody now is over and across the line. Confirmation of result then for Eduardo Radice, back on top on what will now put him all alone with his 7th win in the iRacing Grand Prix Tour. He moves 2nd all-time on his own with victories on his 36th career start. He will win by just under 12 seconds ahead of Volta Lux, who for him for the 4th time in his career will find himself in 2nd and his 8th podium without a race win. Jacob Reed will finish off in 3rd ahead of Florian Kammeier in 4th, and Kent Nielsen for the first time in a year will find himself up in 5th position. Edward Apariari would finish off in 6th, the loser in that scrap for the top 5, with number 7 Paul O'Regan, P7 here today, a gain of 10 places in this race, and absolutely flying for another top 10 finish from Mr. Top 10. George van Rensburg in 8, P8. He finishes off with car number 8, as Gerard Burrell would finish 9th on that contact on the final lap, and Isak Ruska, the beneficiary of that, who rounds out the top 10, having started from dead last. Lyle Pina over the page would be in 11th position, with 12th belonging to Ronaldo Augusto, the two Brazilians, 12th and 13th places respectively, there as the last finishers on the leading lap. Dennis Branch finding troubles in 14th pace, pretty much deserting him over the course of that race, but it is his first finish of the season, with Jason Green, the last finisher, in 15th. A lot of retirements from this race, 7 of them to be precise, and the first of which was Mark van Dalen there, who found himself in the pit wall. Nick Burke is a retiree, as well as Sebastian Rekov, with Robert Ridgway, Sergio Borgia on debut finding retirees, and a day not very much placed for debutants. Sean Fitzgerald is not one of them, but he does retire. But someone who was a debutant was Amin Ali Shahi, who will be a retiree from this race here at Silverstone. But the key here is that we have now hit the halfway stage of the season, Taylor, and that gap is now back up to 40 championship points for Eduardo Radice, and I would say that is still a comfortable margin to be working around.
Yeah, especially with the way Reed is running at the moment. And it feels almost unfair to be so critical of Reed and how he's ran this season so far, but he just hasn't seemed himself over the first half of the championship. It's a quick turnaround between this race and the next one, as it has so often been over the last 12 rounds. But he needs to find something in the second half of the season if he wants to keep that pressure on Eduardo Rodis. The likes of Kamaya and Lux are starting to make those steps forward to be on pace, at least with your defending champion, and that's just going to keep snatching points away from him and snatching points away from him. He needs Rodis to start making mistakes. He needs Kamaya and Lux to fall back a little bit, and he himself just needs to find that extra couple of percent to get himself back in the window of Rodis and start to apply the pressure yet again. No burn Storff. Tonight they retain 5th and 6th, but George van Rensburg up in 7th, with Edward Pariari finishing 6th today and 8th in the standings. No Jorge Martinez, but Paul O'Regan finishing in 7th leaves him in 10th place in the SimSpeed Championship. Kent Nielsen holds on to 11th. This is another list of drivers who have moved a little bit down as others have finished the race today. But Nick Berg down in 17th after his DNF. Ronaldo Augusto in 18th in the championship. Emily Van Kamp still there in 19th. And Bodlash rounding out the top 20. Awad, Mark Van Dalen not scoring any points out there today, so they hold their spots, with Gerard Burrell actually scoring 2 points, which actually brings him a good chunk up the standings, considering how many drivers over the next couple of pages have no points at all. Isaac Ruska scoring his first points of the championship puts him in P31, and Jason Green finishing his first race this season puts him in 32nd spot. Lau Pinar brought his car home in 11th, and Countback helping him out on that one. Robert Ridgway and Sean Fitzgerald just not scoring any points today either, but Countback still helping them out. Continues down, new entries on the standings as well, as Sergio Boya and Amin Al-Shahi find themselves at the bottom of the standings, having not scored any decent finishing positions yet, at least compared to everyone else up in front of them.
Yeah, those first starts of the season there for Borja and Ali Shahi will mean they will go down to the bottom with 58 unique drivers over the course of this first half of the season. And here in front of the Porsche Centre there on the right, we now say one half of this season is in the books, but we are not a million miles away. It is a bit of a wait, though, for that next round of the championship. You'll have to wait all the way for the 25th of July for that next round to come into play. And we are heading, of course, to the Belgian Ardennes, not a million miles away from that famous cycling classic, Liège-Bastogne-Liège. It is the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, and truly the greatest all-around circuit in motorsport.
I will say I did slightly forget that this was a slightly bigger turnaround than the rest of the season, as we almost have a bit of a short summer break, but we are going to one of the most legendary tracks in motorsport, and I'm so excited to hype this one up in a few weeks' time. It's another one where every corner can tell a story, and it's had a refresh since the last time we come here. So look at all those gorgeous, perfect shot. Thank you, Yeaman. As you look at all the paint that's been added to the circuit. It was a very old scan, but to get new scan data, paint the curbs the correct color, it's really brought the track to life over the last season, and it brings the racing to life as well. Lots of short, sharp corners, lots of high-speed corners, and lots of very long straights to encourage and entice battling, as we've seen some dramatic races here in the past. And with the way this championship has been all season long, I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of those in a couple of weeks' time.
Do you remember when champions used to be crowned at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps? Pepperidge Farm certainly does remember out there, but
I'm not that old.
That, of course, with us here on SimSpeed TV to make sure on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitch that you are getting all of the best action together. But the iRacing Grand Prix Tour, yes, it will go into a little bit of a lull, but it does hit halfway as far as the championship is concerned. And what a time to get back into winning ways. It was a 6-race drought, all in all, but a 5th win of the season for Eduardo Radice is one that will now give him comfort in the fact that he is now on top of the championship. But he will not be looking around thinking that he's got complete control, because Jacob Reed still gave a fight today. Florian Kamal, while quiet, still gets some consistent points. And Volta Lux is never a million miles away, down in 4th in the championship. That 2nd place today keeps him in the hunt and saying, I'm still a threat if everything does go wrong for drivers in and around. We will see you here from the UK over to Belgium when we hit round number 13 and the second half of the season as we travel to Spa.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.